Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this workshop with Neil Esterman. Um, if this is your first time meeting him, I'll give just a little bit of background about him. Neil is the developer of Shadow Constellations, combining both constellation work and Jungian shadow work. He's been teaching internationally since 2014, starting with embodied shadow work. And this year he's teaching in India, Vietnam, Sedona, Arizona, Boulder, Israel, Costa Rica, as well as online. And this training in Boulder that we're hosting together, May 29th through June 2nd, is his first time teaching in the United States. In the
In
only
person.
In person. Yes. Yeah, I know he's had students from the US and this side of the world for quite some time, but it's the first in-person training. And yeah, I've been studying with Neil for the last few months, but hearing about him for some years. I remember hearing about him from my teacher while I was in training. And I'll say that my relationship with my own shadows, my relationship with my clients and my practice have shifted significantly since we've been working together. And that as I've gotten farther in the world of facilitation and meeting other facilitators around the world and really feeling invested in how people hold space and what's possible as we're on this path of creating and holding transformative spaces for people, that I've seen people that I care about who have gotten caught or gotten captured by their shadow. Um, I've seen this both in the people that have had a hard time like so launching their practice and really getting to maybe the size or the scale that they want to be able to offer this. And I've seen this also with friends who have had incredible scale and have taught internationally and full schedules traveling around the world, that have then ended up in the news and in not so great lights. And yeah, I feel really purposeful in wanting to bring Neil and his work to the US and to some of my own communities, because I want to see this more in the world. And I really appreciate the way that he holds space and the material that he shares. Um, this workshop will be recorded and sent out to some people who registered, but were not able to attend. This will be shared via his YouTube channel. And if you have any technical issues or any questions, please feel free to message me in the chat. And also, if you have any questions about the training that we're hosting here in Boulder, yeah, May 29th to June 2nd, please feel free to reach out, send me an email. And with that, I'll turn it over to Peter.
Hmm. Thank you very much, Adam. So, hello everybody and welcome. I'm very glad to see you. It's 7 a.m. India time where I'm in right now, and 7:30 p.m. US, Canada time zone. So, thank you for coming here today. And in the time we have together today, um, I would like to first let you get a first-hand impression of this work called Shadow Constellations and how it can be relevant for your own practice. And naturally, whatever we learn on a professional level also impacts our personal lives in different meaningful ways. However, this workshop today, as well as all of my trainings, are aimed at professionals who want to learn to work more deeply and at the same time more safely with clients and students. And so, where shall we begin? And maybe a short intro about the shadow. Shadow is a Jungian concept, so created by Carl Gustav Jung, who was a student of Freud, a psychoanalyst, a doctor, um, a researcher of different esoteric arts, who brought things like collective archetypes and personality identification processes, concepts like introvert and extrovert are also Jungian. He was probably quite a genius, a giant of his time, and at the same time, well, let's just say that today he would be joining those people in the newspapers because he was having sexual relationships with psychiatric clients, stealing academic record from at least one of them, um, and probably doing some other things which we will consider today as shady, to say the least. Um, Probably he would have been hospitalized in a mental ward in a young age nowadays, as he was having dreams and visions about phalluses in dark rooms and had a very strong affinity to basements and considering himself to have at least two personalities. Not many psychiatrists would say, this is normal today, right? Fortunately for us, he grew up and lived before these times, so we get to enjoy the fruits of his genius. But it's also good to remember that no one's perfect, and very often the stronger a person power is, also the stronger the darker influences. And the other source for shadow constellations is, of course, Bert Hellinger, the founder of family constellations. Um, just so I know who here knows family constellations, please raise your hand just to have a sense, at least to some degree. Okay, most of us, thank you. Not all. Yeah, and family constellations bring systemic intergenerational perspective to working with people and our issues. And for me, when I met family constellations in 2016, well, first it was like completely compelling, beautiful, powerful work. And also it's completely completed the shadow work practice I had until then, because in shadow work, we're basically doing self-parts work. We're working with our own self-parts that we have denied, repressed, disowned, that we're not in touch with. And family constellations classically work with the family system and the generational levels, and of course can be extended to almost anything. But some of the connection between the two for me was lacking in the field, like in the white field. Well, for me it was like, how did why are they not connecting organically? Because for me it was an instant match. I think that it took me a month after meeting family constellations to do my first shadow constellations training. And not training, sorry, small workshop. It was in Moscow back then before the war there. And so it really took me very little time to realize that the two are not just complementing each other, they're actually they belong together and should be united in some way. I've been working with people for 21 or 22 years now professionally. My dark past professionally is a first degree in bioinformatics, which is computer science and biology, and a master's degree in science teaching, where I studied interdisciplinary learning between scientists. So I've taken quite a turn since. But finding that what is there to be found and developed in between fields was always my passion, even when I was doing very different kind of work. And here too, I feel that in between classical shadow work and classical family constellations lies some shared or joint field where shadow constellations came up to be. Yeah. So before I talk more about the shadow and shadow constellations and why should we care about it so much as professionals, I'd be really happy if you could share in a few words or a few sentences why you're here today. Like, what is it that it makes you interested, you can even writing in a chat or open your mic and speak. It really helps me to sense you better. Uh, that's okay for you. Just that you know that as of a minute ago, the recording does not show your videos, only your sound. Please.
Um, I'm happy to share. So I'm involved in a community for men's work, and we do a huge amount of shadow work as part of
Mm.
the introduction and initiation into the community. And I've been doing it for 15 years. I'm familiar with constellation work. I've participated a few times in it. I don't know it as well, but I'm intrigued when you say it's an automatic match. I'm still sitting here waiting for that to click for me. So I'm looking forward to having that happen here tonight as you share more. Um, and as a facilitator in a couple of different arenas, I know that shadow is always present and sometimes more present than I want it to be. So um, love to see how these tools might serve me.
Great. Thank you, Ian. Yes, please. Polly, please.
Hi. It's wonderful to be with you again. Um, I just wanted to say thank you for this invite, Adam, and also to near tomorrow, actually, I just wanted to let everyone know that there will be a podcast released that I had the privilege and honor of interviewing near for. And so yeah, I've had the privilege and honor of being a student of his through the Trauma University with Dr. Angwin St. Just, and it 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 never. I guess the word is it never phases to amaze me how during sessions and during even yesterday the interview that I did with you brought up so much for me. Um, and it just is. It just is amazing how how much the shadow work is so profound. I was able to move through a huge piece from yesterday to today because of the interview I did with you, and that was through my failed marriage. How I was attempting to rescue my daughter through her challenges in her marriage. And it was this piece that just opened up a whole portal for me from yesterday to today. And it was a piece that just brought such peace because I was able to include it, acknowledge it
Mm.
of what I was doing. So I can't say enough about what you bring, who you be, and all you do for us in humanity. And I'm just so excited to share the podcast tomorrow because I truly, truly know many will be uh, blessed like I was through.
Thank you very
Yeah.
much, dear Colin.
Hmm.
I think a couple of messages in the chat. Been hearing about your work for a while with different people. Um, I'm stepping more into holding containers and clients, including helping assist in deep medicine retreats. I'm curious to see if this is a good match. Thank you. I also worked a lot with the Light and Dark Institute. Okay. I'm going to do a shorter class with Kate White on the PPN work. So much shadow playing on the world stage. Yes, true. Always have been, but now much more visible, I guess. And I am in a calling to create more space for our shadow parts and also the liberation of shadow from being exiled in bed. Thank you. I didn't hear until now about the shadow constellations, and I'm curious. Curiosity is a pillar in this work, and I've been interested to learn more and bring the benefits of family constellations to clients in a way of merging it with IFS, internal family systems. Great. Thank you, everybody who shared. So, where should we begin? Shadow is the child of trauma. Not necessarily our own trauma, but the trauma of our ancestors, which is the first connection with family constellations. The different fates and difficulties that our ancestors faced changed and shaped what is right and wrong for them afterwards and for the families they've created and maintained. And the same goes for cultures. So what was traumatic on the cultural, national, collective level, and including the collective gender level, shapes what is possible, what is proper, what is right, and what we should hide, exile, and ignore in ourselves if we want to belong. One of the basic principles, one of the orders of love in family constellations is about belonging. It basically says that whoever was born or even conceived to the family system has an equal right to belong there. Sorry, to belong there. This means that no matter what happens, no matter if someone murdered someone and went to jail, or and married someone from the religion of the enemy, or was a traitor, or whether they died really early on, including in the womb. Whatever happened, once someone is a part of our family, they belong. And whenever we forget about them, ignore them, exclude them in any way, there are consequences to the family system. Some people from the next generations will be called to fill in their place, to follow their fate, and to experience their experiences, usually in ways which are not conducive to us living our full lives. Well, I would say that in the world of the shadow, we have a similar principle that all of our self parts has the same right to belong to us. However, usually at a very young age, we are facing, sorry, at a very young age, we're facing a difficult dilemma. We are being conceived and then born into a family and a culture that have some ideas about right and wrong, and what is acceptable and what is unacceptable, what is loved or not, what is appreciated or not. And the price of not belonging to our family of origin or not belonging to our culture is usually way too high, to the point of not surviving. So we need to choose. If in my family, it's not okay to be weak, should be strong. What shall I do with my weakness? Will I say, I am strong. I am strong because I can stay with all of my parts, even though mommy leaves the room when I'm weak and father starts to shout. Well, not many toddlers can do that, right? Will I be angry even if I see that whenever I'm angry, suddenly the room becomes chilly, and I'm not sure that, I know, something good will come out of it? No? Sometimes yes, because some people have anger which is stronger than their ability to deny and repress it, but very often not. And we can go through every emotion, we can go through everything that makes us human. In Western culture, we put the body or the wisdom of the body in the shadow. Like we are we have a mind, and the body is supposed to carry our mind or our presence. And in the best case, we say, oh, our body is a really complex machine, right? We should take good care of it. We should take it to the garage often. We should eat well. And we should do sports. And we should receive physical therapy. But in most of our Western culture, this is the best that we get. The wisdom of the body is left in the shadow together with all kind of indigenous tribes and old wise traditions. Of course, in the New Age arena and in some places, it has returned this kind of appreciation of the wisdom of the body, but in the general world, not so much. Our abilities can go into the shadow. What happens if you're a really smart kid that happened to grow up in a place where smartness is not valued? Yeah, you're not going to be connected with that. What happens if you're a really creative child, but in your family, being stable, really emotionally stable, is of the highest importance? That's my case. Yeah, and both of my parents were born a little bit before or during the Holocaust, and lost family, had to deal with all kinds of greatly changing world. My great-grandfather committed suicide because of, well, they say it's because he was jealous to his wife in an extreme way, not very healthy mentally, right? So being stable, not going to the edges, not exploring what's beyond over there, is just how we do it in my family. It took me a lot of time to realize that, yes, I'm creative and I'm allowed to be creative. And naturally, unconsciously, I married a very, very, very creative woman. Because another aspect of our shadow is that what we are not enough in touch with, whether we think it's good or bad, we will be highly drawn to partners that have it inside of them. We can envision that as I take out a piece of myself, right? I'm disconnecting from something in myself in order to stay safe inside of my family. Okay. What is left in the place of that piece of myself? What is left there? What's your felt sense of that?
Void or shame or confusion.
Yeah. So shame is always shame, yeah, because shame is highly tied to the shadow. And shame was invented when the shadow was invented together sometime during a short while after Adam and Eve ate from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. We had shame, at least in the Judeo-Christian and Muslim mythology. I think that some other mythologies or religions have different versions of that, but they all have a version of that, of the right and wrong, yeah, and how we should be ashamed if we're not doing the right thing. So there's shame, yes, but shame is covering something, and what it covers, among others, is the void. Yeah, which you correctly identified, Laura. It leaves a void, and voids just want to be filled. And naturally, they will agree to be filled with all kinds of stuff, sports, work, food, money, or trying to get money, sex, drugs, alcohol, all kinds of addictions, yeah? But what they really, truly want to be filled with is what was there in the first place. So when I see someone from the sex and gender that interests me enough, and sometimes even from those who are not, and they seem to have naturally in them, and maybe even to a greater degree than most people, something that I'm completely missing. we could have several types of reactions to that. Some reactions are what we usually call the being shadow triggered. So it's not right that they have it and I don't have it. They shouldn't have it too. It makes us angry and judgmental and wanting to change them and educate them to stop being like that. Yeah. How often we bring something and then the other person tries to educate us about how we should feel, how we should be, how we should understand that, how we should act, right? That's a shadow triggered response, a fight response. In some more extreme cases, we really want that other person to completely disappear from our lives. And in even more extreme cases, we actually want to harm them to the point of living our life in a more concrete way, living life. And if that sounds extreme to you, open the newspaper. It's not extreme. It happens on a daily basis all around the world, both on a personal level, but also on the collective level. If people did not have collective shadows running the show, we probably would not be able to have wars. And because to have war, you have to have some sort of ability to demonize the other. They are the evil ones. They are the one who, it's because of them, basically. I read the research once when they asked people all around the world in all kinds of conflict zones, and why are you doing this? Why are you fighting this war? And basically all of them said something like, it's because of them. If they wouldn't be so evil in different ways, then we wouldn't have to be doing what we're doing. Interesting, isn't it? Yeah. So when we see someone that have what we exclude from ourselves because it's not right, you can't be a good human being if you have that in you. We see it on the other side. We want to hurt them or change them or make them disappear. In a slightly not so mild version, I remember once when I saw someone many years ago who I felt to be really self-focused, like deeply self-focused. And I will never forget staying in the same room with, I don't know, 25 people, including her. And I couldn't concentrate on anything but I hope she doesn't have children. Like these genes should just move out of the human genome, you know. And I'm not proud to say it. Yeah, it's not a nice thought to have about someone that they actually burden you. But I was so triggered. And in hindsight, I could understand why I was so triggered because I came from a family and also a culture at that time which was not very individualistic. Was care about the other, see the other, and put yourself second or third or last. And then when I saw something which was completely different, it was like, how can she live with herself? This shouldn't be. And so sometimes we have these kind of reactions, and sometimes we have more like, I don't want to be here, a flat reaction. I'll remove myself. And sometimes when we have clients we don't want to work with, it's not because we can't help them, and it's not because they're uncoachable. It's actually because we have a shadow triggered response to move away from them. Yeah. Just like me, you, same room, nah, not gonna work. If you're hiring her, I'm quitting. In more personal relationships, if you ever thought this came from your side of the family, you know, something about the children, that was a part of that too. And if you felt I don't know why I married this person, or why I don't want to be seen in public with this person when they are acting like that. Well, that's a shadow flight response. Of course, it has disgust or shame, which are not good predictors for happy marriage, but can also be changing to accepting ourselves, and then we can accept our partners even more. And so these like fight or flight responses on the shadow level, no trauma level, are what we usually talk about when we talk about the shadow. But also we can become very tired, and they're more like of a faint response. Ever Has it ever happened to you that you just were yawning over your client, and if you're doing body work, maybe you're almost falling asleep? Yeah, we don't talk about it. Like no client would want to know that their therapist is tired, but sometimes you just can't help it. It's not because we're tired, and it's not necessarily because there's something wrong with us. It's because there's something so deeply in our shadow, usually so deeply in the collective shadow. So like the deeper emotions of rage and terror and very deep shame and personal and intergenerational history of very dark things that happened are usually what would cause us to become very tired. Yeah. And again, it also happens in real life, not just when we teach or work with people. Yeah. Have you ever felt tired when your partner wanted to speak to you about something? Like, oh, sorry, dear, I'm really tired today. Let's talk about it tomorrow. And then a friend calls and you're like, hey, what's up? Yeah. What happened to all the tiredness? Well, the friend did not bring the shadow, your partner did. You can also be triggered into more of a freeze mode, feeling helpless with our clients, especially if our clients have been seriously abused themselves. It's a very common response. We just can't wait for the hour to finish, for something to save us from the situation. And the helplessness of the client captures us. We agree to things that we don't think that we should agree to, or like we do what the clients wants us to do, even though we think it's not right for them sometimes. Like our better judgment is not at its fullest. That is actually also a shadow triggering. And very often we're not even aware of it. It happens. We just realize in hindsight that something wasn't right. And sometimes it's our clients who freeze and do what we ask them to do. Even if we ask really nicely, they feel like they have no choice. And we are sure that, we ask, so they have a choice. And we gave them the option, but they don't have the option. They're frozen in that sense. And that has to do, of course, not only with shadow, but also with trauma. But the shadow is a part of that. And to complete the circle of how we can get triggered, we can have a form of triggering which is called friends. And in the shadow world, it would mean that we lose touch with the fact that there is some power balance here, some hierarchy, that we are responsible, and the other person that we're working with, even though they're responsible for themselves and they're adults and everything, they're actually not our friends. They're our clients and students. Sometimes we can notice ourselves like having this thought that this is how it is, we're just friends. And sometimes we're not even noticing that, but inside of us, we relate to the other person as we're in the same height, but we're not. And some of the most difficult abuses that happened inside therapy and inside all kinds of teaching spaces began where teachers and assistants and the people who were responsible for the space didn't realize that the person who told them, yes, I'm okay with that, did not feel really free to say something else. A lot of recreation of trauma happens in these spaces, even something to very small degrees, like, when you're friends with someone, after you hear them, you want them to hear you, right? Well, that's a problem if you're the teacher or the assistant or the therapist, if you want your clients to listen to you. And if this is unconsciously affecting how much space you take, that you become angry at them when they don't want to listen to you for whatever smart things you have to say. And in some cases leads to all kinds of parallel relationships. For example, the renowned psychotherapist Winnicott once had a client he really liked. The client faced financial difficulty. Winnicott not only suggested that he gives a loan for the client, He was angry that the client did not receive the loan offer. And he was like, a giant in the field. So things happen. And the last one, the last way of being triggered by our shadow is to become romantically, erotically, or sexually attracted. Okay. We don't want to talk about it so much, but yes, of course, we know that clients fall in love with students and teachers, right? We have this aura of we are bigger and better and know something that you don't, and can take good care of you and give you everything that you needed that you didn't get from your parents. But what we do not talk about it enough is that at the same time, we can have these emotions or desires towards our clients and students. And even if both of are adults, and even if it's agreed in advance, and even if, more often than not, we're actually trying to remember the void that we discussed. Yeah, we just want to fill the void. So we see something in our client that we are not enough in touch with in ourselves, and something in us just wants to merge. And if we're even a little bit confused, we will want to merge erotically or sexually. And naturally, it happens with the clients who were already molested or abused, or if there was very strong abuse in their family system, even if it didn't happen to them. What is actually happening is that through our shadow, we're being captured to reenact dynamics with our client, dynamics of abuse, dynamics of neglect, and dynamic of trying to save them, dynamic of trying to perpetrate on them. And in many cases, and not enough spoken of, we get captured into being the silent accomplice again. So it's like we don't see that they are being hurt either by other people or even by ourselves, because we can't see. Well, silent accomplices are those who should have known and should have seen and should have done something about it, but didn't hear anything and didn't see anything. The tribe, the neighbors, the community, the other teachers. Someone should have seen the person, they couldn't. And through our shadow, we can be captured into being in this exact position where I had no idea this happened. I didn't know that you felt that way. And now in hindsight, I can say I'm sorry, but in real time, I could not see you. So all of these come to us through our shadow. All kinds of empathic failures are the result of us being triggered. Because when we're triggered, we can't really see the person that they are. We see our shadow on them, whether it attracts us or makes us go away or makes us want to change them or just fall asleep. We are not with the people. We're here to teach and to help and to support. And so there are many good reasons from a safety perspective to work with the shadow, and also from a developmental perspective, because our clients deeply sense what we can't be in touch with. So some clients and students will just not come to us because they feel unconsciously that will not be a good container for them. Some other clients will come to us, but not with the issues which are in our shadow. Do you have this experience that you've been working with some people for a while, and then you go through some transformation, you go to some amazing workshop or a breakthrough in your personal therapy or just in your life, and you come back to your practice, and the next week, 3 or 4 clients suddenly open up a new topic or a new layer of the relationship. And you're like, where was this before? And the true answer is, I was not ready to hold space for that, and my clients somehow knew. Okay, so what we're not in touch with is not only what triggers us, it also limits what can be in the space. Going even deeper, some of our clients also sense what we can't be in touch with and what we can't hold safely. And unfortunately, it makes them choose us to recreate with them their abuse and neglect. Yeah. There are so many stories about how therapy can go wrong, and not just in the extreme sense of sexual abuse. Yeah? My therapist doesn't really see me. My therapist doesn't really accept me. Everything was fine until I told my therapist that I'm unhappy with X, and she just couldn't handle that. And think about the therapist that I had once that I shared with her just that I would do things differently regarding some institute we were both related to. And she just couldn't handle it. Like for 3 sessions, she kept being triggered with me until eventually she just told me, look, you should learn something else that I can give you. Bye. And like in the most unpleasant, very cut. And I probably maybe not always the easiest client to have, but I'm not that client who attacks and creates huge mess and chaos. I may have too much of a mind or too much of a strong identity for some people to enjoy working with me. That's okay. But like nothing that deserved that, but she was so triggered. Yeah. So sometimes when we lay off clients, it's because we're triggered by them. Sometimes, by the way, it's because of our helplessness. Yeah. If we have helplessness in our shadow, and our client is very helpless, we may be captured by their helplessness into sensing that we don't know what to do and we can't handle that, and we better move them to someone else who can hold them. Yeah. This is an unconscious dynamic, of course, but the result is that we're doing consciously we're doing the right thing. Like, I can't really help you, or I can't be good enough for you. Let me refer you to someone who can. But actually what we're doing is playing along with the helplessness which is in that field. The same thing happened when, for example, in a group constellation, yeah, you're leading something and you're leading this session and you just feel that this is not working. We're not going to do it on time. Everyone going to see that I can't really hold this space well. My imposter syndrome comes up. Whatever I do doesn't work. It's just too much. Yeah. What actually happens is that there was probably something which was too much in the client system, in the client's field. But instead of being able to identify it, their acknowledge it with the representation, etc., we find ourselves embodying it in ourselves. We've been captured. When we look at the group, be it a constellation group or any other group, and we find that we have people that we like more, people that we like less, people that we don't like how they are in the group, or how long they share, or how needy they are, or we think they have this victim mentality, or whatever it is that our judgment is. Yeah, that's our shadow talking. Not us who are supposed to hold the space in an equal way for everybody. Yeah. I can go on with all kinds of shadows and how they affect us, but I think it would be more interesting and experiential for us to do some work together, right? To have a sense of the work. Okay. So I will now invite you for some experiential work each one of us will do with themselves. Just a couple of basic guidelines. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. Everything I suggest is a suggestion. You can take it, you can leave it, you can change it. I won't be able to follow on what you're doing if you change it, but it's okay. But if you feel like you have to do something that you don't want, please do not do it. I have no wish for you under any circumstances to do something that you don't want. If you feel that sense, it's probably some reenactment of something, of some past event, or yours, or in your system, in your field, that compels you to do something that you don't want. Let's try to move from that into acknowledging that this is what is coming up, instead of embodying it and reenacting the trauma. Okay, so you don't have to do anything. You don't have to share anything. You're free to move You're free to stop in the middle. Okay, all good. Right. So we'll do it in our own minds. So please, if you feel comfortable with closing your eyes, if not, you can just find a spot you find it easy to focus on. It's okay if you will open your eyes or move from the focus point and come back. Just take a moment for us to feel our body. The sense of, oh, there is a body here below this head on the screen. We have a breath. We're sitting on something, and the meeting points of our body with whatever we sit on. There is a sense to that. Let's feel that. Maybe our feet are on the floor and we can sense our feet. Talking so much about a shadow can always make some distance between ourselves and our shadows because we don't like to be exposed so explicitly. Let's just come back to ourselves for a moment. And now let us think about some client or student, maybe from the present, maybe from the past, that we have an issue with, that we feel some judgments towards them, some dislike, some anger, some superiority. Maybe you wish they would disappear or stop acting in a certain way which do not approve of. And if you can't find any client or student, you can pick someone else from your life. Please don't take your parents for this short exercise, okay? There are too many shadows over there. And also, please do not take someone that actually harmed you. Take someone that there isn't a good enough reason to how you feel because they hurt you. Just that you don't like who they are. You don't like some characteristic about them. And in your mind's eye, you can imagine that two of you are standing facing each other in some distance, which feels intuitively right. And for the moment, you are watching both of you from a third perspective, maybe from the side or from above. And then let us move our point of reference, where the place from where we see in our mind's eye what is happening. Let us move it inside our own body, so to speak, inside our own representation. If you feel tired or yawning, that's okay. Shadow, remember. And allow ourselves to look at the other person through our own eyes, to sense them through our own body, in our mind's eye. And take a moment to notice how we feel about them. We can notice our breathing and posture, our sense of weight. To what degree do we feel our body right now in their presence? Do we feel pushed or pulled to any direction? Is there something that the body wants to do in their presence? To them, with them, for them, away from them? We can notice our emotions. What do we feel emotionally right now? How emotional are we right now? We can notice our judgments. What do we think about them? Honestly, no one needs to know. You can be as politically incorrect as you like. What happens to our mind, to our thoughts? Do we see any images or scenes in our mind's eye? Do we hear anything in our mind's ears? A song, some sound, silence. And we can explore the relationship. How do we feel about them, about our distance from them? What do we wish for them? Do we want or need anything from them? How pleasant or unpleasant is it to be in the same space with them? We don't need to remember all the answers, just to notice whatever comes to our awareness. And then we can step off from our own image, from our own representations, moving our point of reference gently out, taking a breath, and then moving it into the other person, student or client that we're triggered by. And take a moment to allow ourselves to represent them. There's a different felt sense in the body, different set of emotions and thoughts and needs and wants. Let's give ourselves a moment to notice how we are now in their representation, in the body. How do we experience the relationship on their side? Is it close or distant? Does it feel like you want something from your own representation, your own image when you're in theirs? Is there a need, a craving? Anger, judgment? Do you feel safe? Or how safe do you feel? Do you feel seen or not? Or to what degree? And anything else that you feel or sense, just notice that. Now again, gently disengage their representation. Take a breath. And then the third representation, it can take any shape that your unconscious mind wants to give it. This third representation is for this quality or characteristic that is so annoying in them. Maybe you have a name for it, maybe you don't, doesn't matter. And in your mind's eye, please place it next to them, like a step away from them, to the right or left. And then move your point of consciousness back into your own representation, back into yourself. And take a moment to notice. How are you now towards them and towards that representation of what is so triggering in them? Where is your attention being taken to? Is it still on them, or has it perhaps moved to this triggering quality of them? And now we will add another representation in our mind's eye. It is for the same triggering quality or characteristic, only in ourselves. Whether we know it's there or not, doesn't matter. I just add that representation and placing it next to us, facing their triggering aspect. So we have ourselves, they are standing in front of us. Next to them is their triggering quality, next to us is our triggering quality. And still in our representation, what is happening now? Is there a shift of focus, of attention? How is our relationship with this client or student now? Is there any change? Are they triggering to the same degree? And we can, in our mind's eye, sort of turn ourselves towards that triggering quality in ourselves. Letting the client or student to wait for us to do our own work. How does it feel to just stand in front of it and see it, that it's there? Sometimes it feels friendly, like we've waited for this. Sometimes it feels shameful, I can't believe I have this in me. Or aggressive, no way, this is a part of me. Or any other thing. Just notice how it feels to look at this specific shadow. What happens to your breathing? Is there a change in how tense or relaxed you are? Or how tired you are or awake? It can be difficult to face our shadows directly. If it's too much, take a breath. Think about something that can support you in meeting this shadow. And now please turn yourself again, but not towards the client, but towards the back, so that you're looking away from the client in your mind's eye, which classically in constellation work leads to the past. So you're looking into the past, asking to get in touch with the history that created this shadow in you. Maybe it's a personal history, something difficult that happened to you when you were younger. Very often, in addition to whatever happened to us, something happened before us, to our parents, to their parents, maybe many generations ago. The next representation we ask our unconscious mind to bring is a representation for that piece of history that led to this aspect of ourselves to be going into the shadow in our family and in our culture. Maybe it's a history we are aware of, and maybe we don't. Doesn't matter. Just take a moment still in your representation to look at that history. Get a sense of it. Whatever you feel, whatever you sense, whatever your body wants to do is okay. Maybe that piece of history is a tough one. It often is in order to create a shadow. And maybe you prefer not to go there right now, and that's okay. In that case, just stay in your representation and simply notice that that thing or things which happened back then still affect me today, still shape my shadow and light, my reactions to people. And if you feel that you're ready, that you're supported enough, that you're in good enough shape to take a moment to go into this history in more depth, then you can gently move yourself away from your own representation, move yourself into the representation of the history that led to the creation of this shadow. And if you need to add a representation for something that will support you, please do that too. As you step in or step on the history, just notice how you are. How does this history show itself to you? Maybe visually, maybe in the form of a memory, through a certain felt sense in your body, a knowing, in any other way. Allow yourself a moment to be exposed to the history in the degree that feels right for you now. You don't have to experience it all by any means. We come to acknowledge, not to re-traumatize ourselves. Maybe you can see who were involved, what happened, to whom, by whom. It's possible that some of your shadows, some of our shadows, did not come just because our ancestors were victims. Maybe they were perpetrators. Maybe both victims and perpetrators. Maybe they just had to deal with some difficult situations without anyone hurting anyone. Immigration can do that, for example. Once you have some clear sense of what happened back then, some connection with it, okay, I can see now where it comes from. Then you can slowly disengage and move all the way back to your own representation. As you sort of land back into your own representation, allow the connection with that piece of history to remain that you're coming back and reach it. The connection, the acknowledgement of that piece of history. Take a moment to acknowledge it in a deeper sense, that this piece of history has affected the family, culture, the gender in a profound way. And led to a sort of a split of what is accepted and unaccepted, possible or not possible, what should go into our shadow and what should be moved into the persona, what we should be identifying with, so that we're not our shadow. Now we can gently turn towards our shadow, that piece of triggering characteristic or aspect next to us. And notice, maybe we feel a little bit differently about it. Maybe there is an opening here for us to get more in touch with. Notice how it feels to tell this aspect of ourselves. You are also a part of me. Anger, you're also a part of me. Hatred, you're also a part of me. Feeling scared, you're also a part of me. And so on and so forth. Whatever it is your characteristic that triggers you. See if you can acknowledge it, that it's also a part of you. Or maybe you can just say, I can't acknowledge that you're a part of me. Or I cannot yet. That's also okay. We want to acknowledge what is, not to force ourselves into premature integration. Whatever you chose to say, see if you can say it one or two more times. If English is not your mother tongue, try saying it in your mother tongue. May make a difference. Notice if anything has changed between you and this triggering aspect in yourself with your shadow. Maybe nothing changed. Maybe something small changed. Maybe something bigger changed. All are fine. And take a breath and turn again towards the client or student that we began this walk with. Let's see. Is there a change in how we feel with them and about them and in their presence now? If yes, what is different in the relationship, in how we are, in how we can be? And we can gently disengage from our representation for the last time. And taking a breath, and moving also for the last time for the representation of our client or student. To have a sense of how our journey may have affected how they feel in our presence. So step in or on their representation and notice. Is there any difference? What is possible for them to be or to bring in a sense of safety? Is there a difference in the sense of it's okay to be themselves in our presence? Or in the relative height or size of us? And anything else. Notice and allow anything that would like to change in your mind's eye, in your felt sense. And then slowly disengage, moving away from this constellation in the mind's eye. Taking a couple of deep breaths and gently easing ourselves back to the here and now, the room, chair, to our body, full body. Maybe you want to stretch, take a sip of water. And back to our shared space. What we went through now was one version of one of the shadow constellation structures, and which we will be learning in the training. We'll be learning many others to lead us. There are shadows in different ways, and both as like personal practices like we did now, working in a group setting, but also learning to work in person, small groups, so that we can take the tools once we work with them, with ourselves, we can also take them to our clients and students. How are you? Would you like to share anything in writing or voice? Just a few words about your experience. Has something changed between you and that client or student? A question you may have about the process or about the work in general. Laura, please.
Yeah, it's just really beautiful that, really getting to the ancestral piece. When it was first between me and the client and her shadow part and my shadow part, and seeing kind of the opposite strategies, one of collapse and one of self-reliance. And the annoyance with that. And then when I went into my own deeper shadow piece that led to an ancestral piece, it was, really an ancestor that really was too young to be self-reliant. And I just really saw the layers of coping and felt just like a different level of like authentic compassion. I feel like with the client, I've been giving empathy and different things, and it's been pretty good. But like going into my history and feeling that like really small child that was, really struggling in that circumstance, like a whole different level of my own empathy toward the small child opened up in a different way. And then when I came back to my own shadow, there was a way of a deeper sense of, I guess, honor or acknowledgement of that, in was probably 2 or even 3 generations ago, in Europe, and just feeling a lot of like, oh, this was a really different time, but that is still living in me, like some sense of that. And there was like a wholeness, like some kind of my own like wholeness of holding all of those with a different compassion. And then when I turned toward the client again, I could feel how much softer I was toward her. Yeah. Yeah, really lovely. Thank you.
Beautiful journey. Thank you. I'm wondering how the client representation felt at the end, if you feel like sharing.
Yeah, she, I think the biggest thing was that I could feel like more of the health in her child self than just the collapse. Like I could feel a little bit of like her delight and just like her blueprint and her health was able to show up as I was softer. Like a different sense of welcoming was happening between us.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
We often see that when we do our work, our clients can actually be more. We think that it's them, their issues, their limitations, their structuring, their imprints, there. But probably at least 50 belongs to us. I can't count the number of times that I just place a representation for something in my shadow, not even did anything, didn't touch it, didn't look there, just acknowledge that it's here. And on the other side, even on Zoom, on the other side, people just, oh, something is different. I feel more relaxed. And none of us even noticed that we were not relaxed before because we were so used to operate on that. Okay, it's never fully safe, yeah. So, and suddenly, oh, a new level of safety, or felt sense of safety is really just by our acknowledging that there is something here, even not what and who it belongs to, and all of that. Thank you very much, Laura. Does anyone else want to share or have a question before yes, Mina, please.
For me, it was I guess idea of going. I have one ancestor who had severe schizophrenia, and I instantly went watching how she was, and I realized that part of my shadow is the fear of that I can't be completely myself, that I can't be completely myself. It's and now I notice how big impact it has been for also the way I look people, because my difficult peoples are that kind of who has the same quality. Something is they can't be themselves. There's something heavy, but it's a really big fear that see that there's this something that you can't be what you have meant to be. And then now I realize it when I watch my great great grandmother and seeing this, that she couldn't even totally realize who she was because of this severe schizophrenia. And then when I returned to see that difficult person, I could see that we have this same kind of fear of that something it couldn't cherish inside us.
And how did it feel once you could see that?
I felt some kind of relief because now there's a story behind that fear. It was quite a touching moment.
Can
Have
sense
some
that.
kind of shape for that fear, or because before first impression was I was very dislike about this person who has this same kind of experience, that there's also mental illness there, but I have inherited this fear of what's happened.
Yes.
When that kind of illness stop you seeing what you really are.
And how did it feel for her or him, for your client, at the end of the process in their representation? Did your connection change something for them?
Yes, it changed totally, because there wasn't that knowledge gave me a peace of mind. I could say yes, this is what it is, but there's no need to fear anymore. More present.
Thank you very much for sharing this. Yeah, we don't like to think ourselves as teachers or facilitators in therapy that we are scared of our clients, and if they are not like overtly aggressive, right? But actually, many times what they bring when it is in our shadow, we can't really hold. We can't really be in touch with, so it doesn't threaten us. Like, we don't feel safe, and we are scared that something will of what we cannot be in touch with will rise in us in some way. And then we often move to all kinds of unconscious strategies to avoid that. And eventually it compounds the process instead of helping it. Sometimes leading to really bad results, sometimes just to things not happening. Some aspects of the healing that are blocked because we are too afraid to meet something in our clients unconsciously. So we're not even understanding that we're afraid. So we can't do anything about it. So they can't do anything about it. Thank you. Okay, I see that we're almost out of time. And so I'll just mention one more thing that we didn't touch here today, that very often, or some of the blocks that we have to growth are because unconsciously we feel that people who are successful or big or do big things or whatever, that there is something about them that we don't have or can't have. Yeah? It's a golden shadow, but it's still a shadow. And sometimes a part of the way to grow is to work with these kind of shadows. That, like, what are the big people, the successful people they want to be like, my teachers? What do they have that I don't? Really, maybe I do have it, but I can't touch it because it's in my shadow for some good enough reason. And for my ancestors, let's see if we can work with that. Okay, last few words, I think. First, thank you very much for taking part in this workshop, and whether you are interested or the training in Boulder is relevant for you or any other is or not, I just hope that you took something from today that will be of use for you in your own practice and with your own students. And if there are things that you wanted to share or to ask, but privately, not recorded, etc., please feel free to contact me. And we'll send a follow-up email with my contact details and information about the training. And a few words about the training. In Boulder, it's a 5 day training, like 9 hours a day, where we talk, eat, sit and dance with our shadows in different perspectives and aspects. And in a group settings, we deeply explore various aspects of us. In each, it's basically like 10 lessons. Each lesson is focused on a different aspect. And the first one is about the major archetypes in our shadow world, and the shadow, the persona, and the body in the shadow. In the second lesson, we do the basics of family constellations, because this is the tool that we use, and it's important that we at least have a basic understanding of it. And it's always good to learn these parts again, even if we know them. Then we have a full day, 2 lessons about shadows in the clinic, which are similar to what we did today, more in depth in more aspects and this work. Then we go into cultural shadows, which are a very big thing, especially now in the US, but always in the world. And I keep thinking that I'm coming to the US through Vietnam this time, and how much that has cultural shadows and effects, and how much everything I know about Vietnam is through American eyes of the war. And I'm like, I would like to know the other side as well, you know? And speaking of shadows. And then we move into the golden shadows, which is what I discussed a couple of minutes ago, about the good that we do not allow ourselves to be in touch with, and because it's connected to some other shadows usually. Then we'll start the last deep curve of shadows of helplessness. How helplessness captures us into saving, perpetrating, and becoming victims and becoming silent accomplices. Shadows of aggression and vulnerability, shadows of sexuality, and some, in my eyes, very important things to learn to notice and work with when working around sexual trauma. And we will finish with shadows of death and farewell, which is another big collective and personal shadow, depending on our specific family history. So we'll work with what makes us angry, what makes us scared, what makes us admiring, jealous, and attracted, and all the rest. And on the path to becoming deeper and safer, if you feel that this is calling to you, and the place is with us, the way I see it, and you're most welcome to join us. Adam has just shared you the details on the chat, and we'll also send them in the mail format. Is there anything any of you would like to ask about the training or about the topic before we finish for today? Or anything that you want to say before we finish for today? So I guess it is a no. As we are at the end of our time, I want again to thank everybody and you, Adam, for organizing, and Kirsten here, which came a little late, so I could not present her formally. She will be one of the 3 assistants that we will have at the training. And so thank you for being here today as well. I'm looking forward to see you. Thank you very much. And thank you for what you're writing in the chat. And if this specific training is not relevant for you, remember there are also the shorter training in Sedona, Arizona. And I also offer an online training once or twice a year, and a weekly one, not a 5 days one. And you're welcome to inquire about that if you feel called to that. And please feel free to tell your colleagues and friends and that you feel can benefit from this work. Thank you very much. And have a beautiful weekend.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.